If you're not moving those fluids with a pump, which is the lymphatic system is trying to do that as your job, then you're going to then end up having a lot of cell die and also accumulation of waste. So it's profound.
All right, I am here with Desiree De Spong. She is the founder of Flowpresso, which is a device that delivers compression, far infrared heat, and deep pressure simultaneously to encourage the body's inner systems to activate. Desiree, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Kia ora from New Zealand.
Yes. Super excited to have you on. I got a chance to meet you in person at the last Cellcore, which is a health, for people that don't know, it's a health convention or a holistic kind of health convention, functional medicine convention. And we got a chance to connect, and I got to actually check out the Flowpresso and go on for about 10 minutes, which was just such a tease because I would have loved to hang out for about 45 to an hour. But it's an amazing device. And then even after talking to you more, I found out just some of the other things that it does just besides the lymphatic drainage and the compression, but there's just so much more that actually in some of the studies that you have to back it up. But before we go anywhere near any of that stuff, I'm always curious, like, how did you get started with this? I'm sure it wasn't your lifelong childhood dream to be a Flowpresso. You never thought you'd be here, right? So like, how did this all happen?
Yeah, I did not think I'd be in this role. I listened to one of your podcasts and you're talking about being an entrepreneur, and it's not easy, is it? It's not easy at all. But anyway.
It's not linear. You have to be crazy.
You do. You do. There has to be a sense of craziness to do what we do. So long story short, I was in the field of lymphatics anyway. I'd been actually teaching in the States for about 15 years and met a lot of the colleagues that I know nowadays, like Kelly Kennedy, Dr. Drobot. And basically I was teaching a certain technique that was to help stimulate lymphatic drainage. And it was actually Dr. Drobot, he's based in Arizona, and he said, come on, you must be able to create something for us. Like, you know, it's a real issue trying to find, having a lot of good practitioners in the lymphatic world that can do the full body therapy effectively over a short period of time, because we're in a society that wants it quite quick. So it's quite a lengthy process when you're dealing with lymphatics. And so he was getting a bit frustrated, and then you'd train someone up really well and then they'd go off and do their own thing. So he was going, we must be able to. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. I'll just, create that out of nothing. Yeah, crazy. Yeah, well, sure. So I came back to New Zealand, and I actually had a really big centre with another colleague. There was, we had a integrated kind of centre there, not on the level of the US, but we had everything from an acupuncture through to a psychologist in our team. And we both were feeling a bit burnt out running it. So we both had this agreement, well, let's go and do our own thing. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to become the mad scientist in the basement. And honestly, I did. It was what I did. I moved back into our house. We have a large, do you call it a basement? You do, don't you? Is that what you call them in the US?
Yep. Yeah, like an underground, under the house, right?
Yeah, and so we call it a garage as well. But anyway, so we kitted that all out, and then I started importing different products, which to me is what we do when we kind of biohack. We're trying to work out what's working, what's not. Now, I've also got Eastern training, so I learned all about, meridians and heat and the effectiveness of movement through energetic movement, but also vascular. And I was testing all these theories on my lymphedema cases and my lymphatic patients to see if I could get these results. So very long story short, I created a prototype, which is absolutely embarrassing to admit to now. And I actually had it at Dr. Dan Pompa's conference, and I'm like, that was just such a bad thing to do. You never do that. Never do that as an entrepreneur. Never take in the prototype until you've got it 100% perfect. But we recognized the sequential compression wasn't as good as it could be. The parts weren't as durable. There was just so many. So we went back to the drawing board. Our pieces are made in China, so we flew to China. I wanted to be really sure that the staff were well cared for, that the company had ethics. And so that was an experience, to go to China. And, but it was really great to meet them. We did the whole formal tea ceremony. We made it really quite an official relationship, which has been great for us long standing. And then we had our first unit, our sample hit the shores of New Zealand, January 2020. I had a week to turn it around because we have Chinese New Year as well. So there was that going on for the pieces and everything. So it was a bit of a manic time.
There was this
We
thing
already,
called the pandemic that started, I think, around that time too.
oh
So your
yeah.
timing couldn't have been perfect.
Oh, look, I tell you, it's a story in itself. But we then got our first shipment in February. We'd already pre-sold that in the United States based on the sample product. And fortunately, everyone that had tested the sample went, oh my God, this is like, the ultimate of change, in the sense of, in New Zealand, we have like these little rundown cars and then you have the limousine, and they were equating it, the difference of that. So I'm like, oh, thank goodness. But then in March, we had one person in New Zealand get COVID and we were locked down for 8 weeks. So we weren't allowed out of the country. We went, a lot of companies weren't allowed even out of their house. So we were lucky because we were still a small family business at the time. So we were considered a medical device. So we were able to continue to maintain our supply chain, which was significant. So we chose to fly. We chose to air freight, which is expensive, but it was the saving grace. So that's how I ended up here. And then, scrambled around, because luckily I still had these colleagues in the States that were going to sell it. And we were trying to go, okay, let's talk about lymphatics now, because it's a prime time to get the message out. That raised awareness. And then, of course, I went into this first responder study. And that's when we went down a whole different pathway of what its original development was for.
Amazing. Yeah, we're going to get into those things. And actually, but before we do, I'm just curious too, like, I think people overlook the lymphatic system when they think about overall health. And I'm just curious, and from your point of view and everything that you know, like, I always think of lymphatics too when, oh yeah, well, that's important when you have lymphedema, or that's important maybe with when you have cancer or something like that, or you have a lymph node removed. But why, before any of that, any travesty happens, why are lymphatics important, and why should people be like focusing on this system? We all think about the circulatory system. Nobody cares about the lymphatic system. What do you say about that?
It's a shame. It's a real shame. I've seen this for years. Like, there's a guy called Stanley Roxon in the United States, and he speaks a lot on lymphatics. And I was at a conference with him once, and he was saying that he did a study on the 4-year doctorate. And he said on average, it was 2 hours of study on the lymphatic system. This is the garbage truck of the body, right? So we all know that when we're detoxing, we want to move byproduct out. If your lymphatic system isn't working optimally, you won't move it out. A lot of people are sitting now, they're not breathing sufficiently, and that's all indicative of moving lymphatics. And so we're finding even the healthiest, I won't say you, but some of our practitioners that, get in and they go, oh my, I had a Herx response. And I'm like, yeah, your lymphatic system isn't working. So, the issues are in the tissues. It's a common thing that Kelly Kennedy says in the United States, and quite a few of the biological medicine team do. And it's really about that your cells are bathing in fluid all the time. And if you use a simple analogy of a goldfish in a goldfish bowl with no pump system, over time, the water changes, right? Because the byproduct of the fish, the cell, is starting to dump waste into that water. Now, over time, that fish is going to die, right? Or in this case, the cell. So if you're not moving those fluids with a pump, which is the lymphatic system is trying to do that as your job, then you're going to then end up having a lot of cell die and also accumulation of waste. So it's profound. It's also your immune system. Like all fluid that goes into the lymphatics, that's where all your lymphocytes are. So the team that's going to help you fight anything that's viral, cancer, our dreaded COVID, those. So when your glands go up, that's your lymphatic system, the lymph nodes working, to their fullest and effectiveness to try and fight whatever you're going on. So it really is mind-boggling for me that it hasn't got this worship. And I think it comes back to because it's not easy to move. In other words, from a medical perspective, we either remove lymph nodes or, we're starting to do some medical procedures now where we're moving lymph nodes to different sites, but it's not the easiest system to work with. And I think that's where the challenge lies. And most people will say, but I move, I physically move and I think I breathe okay. But if there's more toxins coming in, environmental toxins coming in that we're moving out, then it becomes a backlog. So it's like a overflow of fluid that we end up getting, and it doesn't present always as swelling. You know, it's your cellulites, it's your gut issues. I mean, 80% of your immune system's in your gut. So this is why it's so important that we consider the lymphatics when we're doing any detoxification or any health program.
Yeah, so critical. I love that you said that. And, you know, even as a holistic health practitioner and a lot of people in my cohort, we talk a lot about in the first phase of any of the way we look at getting someone better and on that path to optimal health and wellness is drainage. And so that is what you're doing. We're helping with the liver and the kidneys and the gallbladder, and that's one form of, you know, detox and drainage, but also the lymph. And so it's so critical. So I love, that's the way I even really look at it, is that's phase one. And so you are powerfully influencing phase one in a really dramatic way. So that's really neat. I wanted to ask you actually just really quick on that note too, the lymph system. You know, a book that I read a while back by Dr. Thomas Cohen, I don't know if you've read this one, but he talks about the heart. And in that book, and I'll have to look it up, I'll put it in the show notes, but in that book, he says his belief is that the heart is not a pump and that it is this cellular water, and it's actually the lymph system that is pumping our body, not the heart. And it's very controversial because we've all been taught, no, the heart pumps, and that's what pumps our blood. His argument is, I don't think so. It's the lymph system that's actually moving that blood. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, or if you got a chance to talk to Dr. Cowan, and I don't know how many people think the way he thinks, but it's interesting.
It is a challenging perspective, but then you look at, I mean, they only did a review on the vascular physiology back in 2014, and at that time they said lymph was only good for overflow fluids, it had no role. And then after that, they turned around and said, actually, 85% of all your tissue fluid goes via the lymphatics. So all swelling is a form of lymphedema. Now, as I said earlier, we can only move lymph through physical movement, through breath, and then ironically in the parasympathetic stage. So we know overnight we are actually, when we sleep, that's in the parasympathetic, that's when our fluids go down. Now the heart, it's a circulatory system. So they work together. So it's like they can't work without each other. So if there is a fluid issue, there's a vascular issue because it's leaking. So there is to me, it's interrelated. So though they say lymphatics doesn't have a pump and that the heart's the pump, I do believe there's a lot more to this than we have really understood. Like you look at the lymphatics. You know, in my teaching for years, we've talked about draining the brain because it was always an issue, especially with cancer patients having brain fog. And so you knew you were draining because, you know, in our anatomy books, the lymphatic systems stop here. Well, since when has the body been that useless in the sense it's such an amazing system? Like it wouldn't just stop here. So they finally found out a few years ago, oh, look, we do have a lymphatics. So I think his ideas are going to start to be getting a different look, you know, from a point of view of maybe we aren't getting this right. I mean, if you look at any sort of research at the moment, they're all coming up with different ideas how something works. I mean, look at the soul. They now can connect to understand the soul, the cellular memories, all this stuff. So yeah, I scientifically, I'm still slightly challenged because it does pump. But I think it's the momentum of fluid and the suction and the volume and the pressure that we're not actually considering in more in depth.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you said that. I mean, we're still learning and discovering new things, the things that we once thought was not even a thing. Like you said, quantum energy and quantum health. People said like, oh, that's impossible. Well, Dr. Joe Dispenza is proving that, and he's backing up this idea of quantum health and energy and the transfer of energy with scientists and doing studies to prove it. So I think there's a lot we don't know, and it's exciting.
Well, lymphatics is all about letting go. So if you're into, you know, you're Louise Hay or you're Annette Noontil, it's all about releasing the anxieties of life and stepping into your true form, because lymphatics helps you move not only fluids, but the cellular memories and everything that's there. So often people with lymphatics therapy will end up, have some emotional releasing as well. And it can ironically be anger because the liver's now working. And I know you do a lot with weight loss. And honestly, so many, especially women I've met, have presented with, these lymphatic issues or weight issues, and they've been told they're overweight, and they're not. It's a lymphatic issue. Some of the really quick guidelines that we understand is that, if your mother had cankles or your grandmother had cankles, then it's a lymphatic issue, and a lot of the relief these women get, because we get their fluids, especially in the pelvic floor, in the pelvic basin there, if we get those fluids moving, then you start to see this weight change significantly, because you're helping them with, example, the liver, the gallbladder, everything to, work it out, move it out, clean it out. But once you get that lymphatic system linked in at the same time, it's all of a sudden, wow, I just all of a sudden losing weight left, right, and center. And so it plays a really important role from that perspective as well.
Okay, you just hit on something really major, I think, because as the way I sometimes even look at health, and I'm very holistic, and I look at everything, the body, the mind, the emotional aspect of things. But even when I think about this lymphatic massage, if you were to ask me, hey, Joel, do you want to hop on the Flowpresso? Absolutely, because I want a massage. But that's the way I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it very just linear and just it's physical. I'm being touched and it feels good. But talk about some of what you just brought up. Like, it's more than that. Like it could help with emotions. It could help with other things. Talk about some of the maybe added benefits other than just this physical touch.
So we have a thing called the Wairua here. We call about the Wairua in New Zealand, and that's about connecting to, who you're here. So whether it's God, soul, purpose, there's so many different opinions around this. So I'm not going to focus so much on that. But so to get to that, we need to go through the heart. So it comes back to your heart thing again. And, so for me, when you are put into a situation like Flowpresso where you're wrapped, you're held, you're hugged. I mean, that was one of the biggest things that came out of this was everyone was going, I feel like I've been hugged all over. You feel safe, you feel connected, but you become back to you and awareness to you. And what is if nothing, one of the worst things about COVID was we all became disconnected. We all weren't touching. And that really had a massive impact from, I think that's one of the biggest reasons the mental health is to the point it is at the moment. And so when you bring someone back into that connection, when you move fluids, you're moving life. So it's like the river. If you come down the river and you're floating down, you're going to keep moving. If you hit the rapids or you go off on the rocks, you stop. And fluid is all about movement. So for us, lymphatics is all about you being able to have the ability to let go of everything that you've been holding on to. And so this occurs in the session, but in a way that's not traumatic or anything, because you just have this inner connection again, like, I think I know me again. I think I understand me. And some people have the most beautiful spiritual experiences, like a couple even at that Boise conference. One said, I just felt like I'd touched God for the first time. Wow. We had one at the BRMI, this one in Arizona, and he's high up in that area, and he said, I felt like I had angel hands touch me. So there's all these beautiful experiences that happen, but they're individual. So, if you're only into physical, then, you'll even find, though, that you drift and you lose all track of time, because we're just putting you in a place, and men love it. It's 40 minutes of silence. They're being left alone. They're being looked after, but they're fully clothed, which is a big thing for a lot of people, we've realized since we started doing that way. And just being able to have that moment of clarity, of that cognitive change, because we know through our research we changed not only the brain waves but also the detoxing of the brain. So you can imagine having that coming out, like being an entrepreneur, going in with 10,000 things on your mind and then coming out revitalized energetically, let go of a whole lot of stress, and then you've got more clarity. So there's a lot that goes on with lymphatics that we still are yet to prove in research, I think would be the way I'd say, but it's always been about letting go. What are you holding on to is the first question we'll ask people, and then are you now ready to let it go?
It's so good. Next, I do want to talk about the research, but I just put a post out today talking about overwhelm. What's 5 things you can do? Because a client actually inspired me to do this post because she was in a state of overwhelm, and I said my advice to her was, guess what? In this state, you need to double down on self-care. I said, in times of like what we were just talking about, entrepreneurship and in times of fear and doubt, like the first thing we do is we let all the good things go that we were doing before. Cold plunges, massages, meditation. We don't have time for that. We don't have time for. I'm like, no, 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 no. You need to double down on that. And so I love that you just said that, because this is a great hack or a great reminder of, like, we need that. We actually really need this, and we need to be letting go more. And I know for me, it would be hard for me to like schedule these Flowpresso sessions in through the day, but man, it would actually probably make me more energetic and even better as an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, as you said, it's self-care. And, not everyone has access to this, but, when you think about it, the breath is one of the quickest ways to put us into parasympathetic. We see it through our studies we've done. And, there is so many other things, because I know, but even if you're just moving your lymph, there's, you can do online courses in drainage, there's movement, getting like on a vibration plate or a lymphocyzer. There is ways to do this without it costing you a fortune. I just know that when we've put people in the suit, we lovingly call it the suit because that's what the kids call it for some reason. So, when you go in the Flowpresso, it's like a reset. It's like the control alt delete, we call it, like we used to do with our computers. And I think right now, what's happened over, especially the last 2 years, it was happening anyway. The stats have already been there, and I'll talk about those in a minute about first responders. The stats were already there. They've just got even worse.
Yeah.
So the thing is we've gone and created a new normal. And I think this is one of the biggest things we realized when we did the research was that you're going along, you manage a bit of stress, and then you can kind of adapt back. Then you're a bit more, and you keep adding into that stress load, and all of a sudden this is your new normal. And your body's adapting all the time to that, to manage that. So you're kind of in that survival or freeze state, which I think where everyone is drifting at the moment, and it's overwhelmed. It's too much because your autonomic nervous system is keeping you there. And it doesn't matter how much meditation and all those things, it's like you can't quite get back unless you spend a couple of weeks or even months being present to that so that you can do that. And I think what the suit is doing, what we're realizing through heart rate variability, is that you're just getting that switch back. You're getting that, hang on, this is normal here, not what you've created. And then your body goes, oh, excuse my language, hell no, like that's what? I've completely mucked this up. Let me start sleeping more. Let me start resting more. And then you've got no choice because your body's going, I actually need to re-regulate, because the human body is phenomenal. If it gets the message right, it's amazing what can happen.
I love that. I say the same thing to all my clients. When your body gets the right input, that's all it needs. The body needs the right input. It knows how to heal on its own. It just needs the right input. So good. Let's talk about, and actually before we do talk about the studies, I just want to highlight it because maybe we didn't talk about it, but yes, the Flowpresso is a suit. The best way to do it is you jump on a massage table, and then Desiree or a Flowpresso technician will hook you up. Your legs get hooked up in this suit, your arms, your waist, and then the arms will compress, and everything compresses in a nice, gentle way to move that lymph. You also, and we should probably talk about the infrared heat and some of the heat that comes and that nano vibration, so I guess before we talk about the studies, let's talk about what the Flowpresso is and really what makes it different than other lymphatic drainage or compression technologies, because I know several out there. There's one called the Balancer Pro. I was just at the biohacking conference. I saw that. And there's another one that I can't even, it escapes my mind right now, but a lot of athletes you see using that. They're using that like they're suited up on their legs and they're pumping that after games and stuff. So yeah, what makes Flowpresso different and unique?
Yeah, so that one is Normatec, and that's been around a long time. It's an amazing product, and both of those are great products, don't get me wrong. But the difference for us was that, or for me, when I was in that mode, was I understood the importance of heat. And I understand, especially critically from when you're thinking Eastern-wise, like most of us are running in a lower body temp, if you're taking your basal body temp. And, that 1 degree Celsius, which I think is about 3.5 or 4 degrees Fahrenheit, can reduce, your immunity by 20%. So and it's not even, and metabolic, everything. So much goes on when our core body temp isn't holding. So the reason we did that was to ensure that we were getting vasodilation, so of course blood flow, and actually encouraging the oxygenation and nutrients, but at the same time bringing in the compression. So we were able to get the circulatory system working more effectively, but also, as I said earlier, in your gut, you've got 80% of your immune system. So many have GI issues these days, and it's warming that internal up. So warming the organs is actually all about supporting the organs. It's about helping nourish blood flow, warmth, to actually get, and I know cold plunging is another thing, but when you're dealing with gut issues, I've found using heat, and especially on kidneys, because kidneys love the heat, because they're all about warmth, and that's your chi, or your energy of the body. So for us, it's about putting warmth into the body and helping move. Now, when you've got more chronic conditions, you tend to not get the movement and the extremities going. We tend to turn heat off because you don't want to, detox too quickly. And women's cellulite is the body dumping stuff away from the organs so you can do what you're here to do and have children. So, and it's lots of hormones. So you don't want to be lunging that into the core of the body to manage when they're still trying to detox and get their vitals functioning more efficiently. So that's the heat. And then the other difference was a thing called nano-vibrational technology. Now, it's really out there, so go with me. So this was actually developed by
Desiree, we love on this show, we love the woo-woo, so bring on the woo-woo. Yeah.
So, and it's actually developed by a US ex-engineer of the military. So he recognized that through certain frequencies, we could actually do this in a way. So I sort of liken it to PEMF to help people understand, but we don't use power, we use the body heat. And body heat creates movement in the particular, so it's got atoms that collide inside the chip. Now, I spent 2 years studying this product, and we were using it for pain. So we were putting on certain locations to see if we could help manage painful issues, and people were starting to walk without a cane. There was things like that happening, and I went, okay, this is phenomenal. But I also found you couldn't wear it all the time because it started to affect the heart. And so I knew it was a short term, let's help you. So the other unique thing that the Flowpresso has is a piece that sits on the back, and that helps with the subscap. So many people are carrying their stress in their shoulders and neck. And of course, lymphatics ends up in the termini, which is above the collarbone. So we've got to make sure you're super relaxed, so you're open and ready to receive these fluids, but also drain the lymphatics, so the brain. So it was placed on the back of the neck, so that the idea was if you had painful neck or shoulders, you could relax a bit more, but also because it's all about frequency, the body absorbs that on a cellular level. So we've seen it with EEG testing, for example. We've seen that it creates artifacts. So we know that it's creating a frequency when you're lying on it. So the thing for me was studying it for 2 years. I went, we're onto something here. It took that long to get the exclusivity to this product, the proprietary rights to use it. And now we've got that in the suit as well. So there's those 3 different aspects. So, for example, Balancer Pro and Normatec, they move lymph. They're all about moving fluids. From a lymphatic point of view, the only thing I'd say with Normatec, it's great for sports people, but if you're chronic, it's not great for you because we're pushing fluid up into your abdomen. You need to have abdominal lymphatics to move it up to the termini where it meets. And they do now have extra pieces. So that would be the point of difference, I would say. But that's why we're unique, and we've gone down not so much the lymphatic pathway, but this whole, which we can lead into the research, the whole sleep, stress and anxiety, which is really the focus for us right now.
Yeah, so cool. The nano vibration to me is not, it's not crazy thinking. If people just think, what about sounding bowls? What about there's these vibrations, these harmonies, music back in Native American tribes, using music to get you in a certain state. On a cellular level, our body is communicating based on that environment. So yeah, you're changing cells in real time. I totally get that. I think that's really neat. The other interesting thing you mentioned, and I never thought about it until you just said, low body temperature. I interviewed this guy who has his own supplement company, and he's very, very knowledgeable about health, though. It's not about supplements. He understands health at a really high level. And one of the things he told me, he said, Joel, there's 3 big causers or drivers of disease. And he said, one of them is low body temperature. And I've never heard anybody say that. And he goes, yeah. He's like, think about it. He's like, many people I meet, their body temperature is what you said, 3 degrees or something. That's a huge drop. It may not seem like much, but what does the body do when it's sick? It heats up. It builds a fever. These people can't fight off chronic infections or anything because their body temperature is so low. So I think that is amazing. And I never thought about that until you just mentioned it. So that's very cool.
Yeah,
Let's talk.
It plays a important part. Sorry, no, to say that it does. It plays a very vital part.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into it. You blew my mind when I was at the conference, and I had mentioned my past as a first responder. You have some very cool studies talking about first responders, police officers, I believe in New Zealand, and how the Flowpresso helped them. Can you talk about that and sleep and stress?
Yeah, so we had a critical incident here in Tauranga. Like, by all means, New Zealand, fortunately, is not dealing with quite the extreme cases that you are in the United States. But we still had this particular critical incident, and they were looking for the wellness officers here were looking for another approach for the team and they are called AOS, which is Armed Offenders Squad, which is the equivalent to your SWAT. Mm-hmm. And they were looking for a different option because EAP, which is your psychology and your counselling side of things, they weren't really like feeling that was going to be their thing. Even though they were getting some, they wanted something over and above, like a somatic experience. And so we had one particular guy come in initially, and he was ex-army as well, so that was a challenge. And we thought it would be, but he came back and went, "This is phenomenal. I'm sleeping straight away. Like, I can't believe this." So long story short, I met with the wellness officer and said, "Well, actually, I'm going to be doing a study. We want to measure because we're right in the middle of COVID. We were limited to what we could do." I said, "Well, I want to do this study because on heart rate variability and stress, because I'd been working with the cardiac clinic up the road and we had noticed these changes." And so I think within about 7 hours, I had about 20 people on offer. It was like there was no shortage of stressed, not sleeping first responders, right?
Go figure.
So we went into our first study, and that was a session a week for 6 weeks, and we were measuring pre and during and post base to get our baseline and then through to our measures afterwards. And what we started to see was through the fascinating thing was these were young, well, I call them young 45 to 50-year-old men, highly fit and looked fit. But when you put them on heart rate variability, what was fascinating is they were living more in a sympathetic response lying down than they were standing up. And that was mind-blowing for me. And we see that time and time again, not just with first responders. We've just done another cohort of nurses, and same thing. And so here they can't even lie down and de-stress. It's like they're waiting for that next call, or they're waiting for that next rollout, whatever it is that they're dealing with. So we went through this process of studying them, and we found that we were switching this heart rate variability after 3 sessions. We were moving them around, and by 6 sessions we had them into almost a balanced autonomic state.
Wow.
Then we were saying that they were reducing fatigue, they were getting changed to cognitive response. In other words, going to an incident where they could review it for what it was without feeling like they were in it, and they couldn't, like you get so stressed out, it gets beyond being able to rationalize how do you manage it. You probably know all of this.
Oh, yeah.
So we did a couple of these studies, and then next minute, the district commander here, he's a superintendent, decided, you know what, I want to make this available to all my staff, which is significant here in New Zealand to do that as a rollout. So we said, well, could we do a bigger study? So we put through 135 candidates, male and female, varying from first responders, so on the line, we call them public safety team, up through to Armed Offenders Squad. And once we came out the other side of that study, we found that this was all done through subjective questionnaire, so we didn't actually do any biometrics. But it came back that we had 92% improvement in sleep in the first round and 77% improvement. So these particular staff were saying for the first time they were sleeping 7 to 8 hours, and some that hadn't done that for 40 years. So it was like, oh wow. And then when we drove down into the stress so with stress and anxiety, it was between 25 to 34% change. Wow. So in research, that's considered significant. That's not a light amount. So we were very impressed to see that. And this is where it started taking us down another whole pathway. And as I said, we've just done a round of nurses. We've dug deeper, even more into fatigue, and they had up to 70% change in their fatigue. So, that's phenomenal for a first responder, right? I don't think people really understand what you have to deal with. So whether it's a nurse, a paramedic, firefighter, I mean, you guys live every day in a stressful environment. And the great thing about my job is no one knows I've developed the product here in New Zealand. Well, they're kind of starting to learn. But I turn up and like when I was texting you the other day, I was actually in a police station running one of the clinics because I want to go in every now and then and just get the feedback and the response. And it is super cool to see the change because I was in the fire service in New Zealand for 5 years, admittedly, and I was in running the exams for the firefighters, and also I was volunteer support and finance. But my partner's 28 years being in the police force. So we understand the psyche and what goes on and the pressure. So to have detectives even emailing me going, Desiree, this is unbelievable. Like, I can manage my stress load now. I can manage my environment. My wife is happy. Like, we were getting partners ringing off the manager, like the superintendent, going, oh my God, can you please keep that up? He's like a different person. I got my husband back. Sleep is paramount to wellness, but it's also what we've found through these cognitive measures is that it's actually helps you manage your environment differently. You can go out, and the nurses said the same. I'm going to that ward now. I can manage the situation differently. I don't take it home anymore. I see it for what it is, and I'm dealing with it. And that they said it was life-changing for them. So, I mean, it's a real personal thing for my partner and I to be involved because of that. And we had this amazing opportunity when I was in the States this trip to actually go to the New Zealand Embassy, and we were speaking to law enforcement, Homeland Security, and there's a real shift now. There's a real focus on needing to help the people that are at the front line of the worst possible situations. And if we can help them recover and sleep better and manage, that's a ripple in our community, right? That's a massive ripple effect. And I was looking at, I had to pull up some studies just in the recent news of what's going on in law enforcement in the US, and it was just article after suicide, health issues. I mean, heart attack is one of the biggest issues for law enforcement. Yeah. But, even back in 2018, there was a study done through the fraternal police. And even then, back then, they were saying that 79% had reported critical stress. And that 69% believed they had behaviour associated to PTSD. So it was not where we were expecting to go. But, we hear it time and time again from the clinics that are using the products, people sleeping better, managing their stress. We've done some preliminary studies in concussion and also PTSD, and there was improvement there. So, I mean, it's amazing. It's totally amazing. It's to be able to be making a difference in the worlds of some of these, these staff that are doing incredible jobs, and I just don't think they get credit enough.
No, never. And it's always unfortunately a thankless job because you only hear the negative, right? You never get to see the positive. And so those are special moments when you get to connect with someone like yourself or someone in the community who just says, thank you. I know it's a big deal. And you mentioned it. I didn't even think about it, but yeah, suicide, depression, very high in our line of work. When I was just talking to James Gearing, who I'm definitely going to have to connect you with, I think he'd be amazing. He was a firefighter, and I read his book, and I didn't realize that suicide was really just as high in the firefighter community. I thought it was just a law enforcement thing, and come to find out, he's like, no, man, there's a huge uptick and just the trauma that they see. And then thinking about all this shift work, which I tell all my clients, I have a lot of first responder clients, and I'm like, you need to get off the shift work. It's killing you, in so many ways, in sleep is a big one for sure. So yeah, I just think about, wow, just the effect you can have on just this one community. I mean, this machine can do so much more, but for everybody, but just this one community, if you just change that, think about the ripple effect you're going to see in society. It's going to be really, really powerful.
Yeah, well, as I say, we've certainly, it's been, if nothing, COVID was a blessing in that regard. It took us down that different path that we may not have considered, because my world was always in the lymphatics. So all my colleagues in the States were looking to me for that, not this, and this is the bonus. But when you look at deep pressure therapy, which is what we feel we're delivering, so similar to your weighted blankets, and that is that where when you hold someone and give them that, that real strong hug, we all know hugs. Like if you look at the research on hugs and dopamine and serotonin and all those lovely feel good, then you start to understand why people are coming out different. And we call it the flow look now, because people come out looking like they've, I don't know, had a couple too many wines, and they're just like in this state of bliss. And I think, we all kind of need that right now. And so that's where I have found I'll tell you one case. When we first started this study, and there was a young guy in the armed defenders squad, and he walked in, and the management had said, "You're all doing it. We all want you to do it because we know it's going to make a difference." And he walks in and he goes, "I don't do this kind of thing." And I said, "What's this kind of thing?" And he goes, "I don't do massage." I said, "Well, it's not massage." "And you're clothed, so you're good." I said, "Do you play sport?" And he goes, "I play golf." I said, "Do you want to improve golf?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, we've got sports people using this." And this is the amazing thing, is we've got a guy called Hayden Wild here who's a triathlete, and he loves it. Like, we've got even lacrosse teams in the US using it. So that was a good turning point. But the funny thing is, he went in quite stoic looking, and he came out and he looked like a teddy bear. He was just so relaxed. And he goes, "So when's my next one?" It was a very cool story I know it seems small, but it's amazing to be able to change someone where they could just let go.
Totally.
And the great thing about this, I know, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say, one of the things I learned in the US was that right now there's a real lack of, within especially law enforcement, there's a real concern about how they're being measured, monitored, observed. And I think that is everywhere at the moment, because you're always being watched. And so what we realized, which we hadn't thought of, is we don't measure any biometrics in the suit. So you're set up, you lay down, and then we put the settings that feel like a hug to you, not a blood pressure cuff squeeze, and then we leave you to it. And there's no measure. So no one's tracking you, no one's monitoring your biometrics, no one's holding any information over you. And I didn't realize that till when I was talking, that was a big plus, that you can just go and have that 40 minutes to yourself. No one's keeping an eye on you, and no one's monitoring you.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and I can tell the law enforcement community is highly, highly scrutinized in the U.S. and everywhere, and they do probably feel that pressure, and that it's just there's all eyes are on them. So it's just a nice way to check out. The other thing I think that is just so powerful about this is if you tell someone in law enforcement or any of these alpha male type of SWAT officers or firefighters, "Hey, I need you, your sleep is not good, you're emotionally dysregulated, you need to go see a therapist," there's going to be a lot of pushback, right? Yeah. And so what a great way, I think, in a reverse engineered way to get someone back to baseline, recover their HRV, recover their mental state by just giving them a hug in this roundabout for 40 minutes, right? I think it's really, really powerful, and it's going to improve physical things like sleep and many other things. So, yeah.
Yeah. And physical ailments, like, we're getting a lot of them in the police here now using it for recovery, so return to work. So, if you've had an injury and concussion and all those sorts of things, because it also helps. So, if you work out at the gym and you're really sore, it's great for that, or you've been in an incident where you've been injured, great for that. So there's all these other areas that are benefiting. But, yeah, our research was done predominantly around the sleep, stress, and anxiety.
Yeah, amazing. Sleep, stress, anxiety, lymphatics, physical recovery, HRV. Is there anything else that you could think of, or anything else that you're hearing back from maybe other practitioners? I know you just mentioned, "Hey, Joel, I just found out it's great for jet lag." Anything else like that? I have a friend, by the way, who has a kind of biohacking center in California, and she she has a lymphatic machine. I think she has the Balancer Pro. I'll have to tell her about you. Maybe she can upgrade. But you know why she got it? She found out that she had cancer, breast cancer, I think, and she found out a lot of women in her community, this is a big deal, the lymphatic drainage. And so for the cancer population too, this is a huge, huge thing, which I was unaware of. So yeah, anything else that you're seeing this used from that we may not think of?
I think one of our greatest challenges as a company, you have to stay on target with your market, and otherwise it's so easy to go, oh, look, go over there, oh, and
Yes.
the reality is the lymphatic system is one of the most major parts of recovery for anything. So we don't drill down to all conditions, because I always go, and I've worked in the cancer industry for years, so I know even from switching heart rate variability, taking someone out of that fight, flight, and that stress response means cell production changes. So I want them to have that. My sister went through stage 4. She's still here today with clear, and that was, a significant, but she's in the suit every week because I know I've got to keep her regulated. So from a lymphatic point of view, any health issue is going to benefit by moving lymph. And that's where, I've started to keep going, oh, okay, we get another story. Oh, I didn't think of that one. Oh, look at that. So, the thing for me is it's more about, if we move lymph, we're moving byproduct. We're bringing new nutrients and oxygen into the body. So any health issue is going to improve. The only contraindications we have is congestive heart failure, because you don't want to increase blood flow. And we have like infection. So if you've got cellulitis or even a spider bite, we don't want to push that through your body unless you've been managed already. Obviously, your first trimester of pregnancy is a biggie. No one wants to go there. But we've even found like women post, the birthing and that recovery afterwards, we've been fed back lots of stuff, polycystic ovaries, all sorts of things, because we're moving lymph. So we're creating better blood flow and all those sorts of things. So yeah, it is kind of one of those things. Other than our contraindications, I'm not sure if someone wouldn't benefit in some way, no matter who went in it. And
Yeah.
I will honestly say the most astounding thing for me, and when you are in a clinical world, you don't always get it right. You don't. There's always going to be, but the only people that we've had struggle with Flowpresso is someone that is claustrophobic.
Yeah.
But we found when we took the arm pieces away, and so they still had movement in the upper body, they relaxed into it. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm going. I know that was around the story thing, but it's kind of hard because I don't know what wouldn't benefit from getting lymph movement,
I don't know.
warmth, but right now a damn good hug.
I love that. Okay, cool. We'll get ready to wrap some things up. Before I do it, but any exciting projects that you're working on other than everything?
I've got another product about to launch.
Oh,
That's a self-care one, so it's for consumers. So it's a handheld lymphatic unit, especially for lymphatics, because since COVID, there's a lot of research coming out that it's been hitting the pineal gland and all, dealing with a lot of brain fog at the moment. And it is one area I want to enhance on for our product, because of the fact that I'm all about lymphatics and I understand the long-term impact if we can get that right. So that's in our product roadmap. It's a lot more work to that to be able to get, because I can obviously not put compression around your throat. Wouldn't be pleasurable, right? So
yeah.
in the interim, that one's about to be launched. And then we do have what's called a next generation, which I'm working with engineers here in New Zealand. It's going to be a 3-year project, and it's like a whole nother level of sensory systems in the suit. So that's more about biometrics and fluid movement and pressure, etc. So yeah, I know we've always got things on the go. And then coming back to frequency, my little private passion at the moment is I've been working with the engineer and developed this necklace that is radiating at 432 hertz, because that's all about bringing people back into their heart. So always doing something as an entrepreneur. You know what it's like.
I totally do. I have like 5 big projects going on, and that's probably, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but they all light me up. So good.
But it's why we do it.
Yeah. Before, I want to jump into some lightning round questions and then tell people where they can find you and learn more about Flowpresso. But before I do, is there anything else that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
No, it's been awesome to be able to connect with you and do this. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. All right. I'm curious. what are some choices, Desiree, or maybe a choice that you think you made that made you who you are today?
I accepted who I was. I had to. It's different. I grew up in a family that everyone said I was different. I challenged everything, even in the lymphology world, I've challenged everyone on everything. And accepting who you are as who you're here to be is the biggest thing anyone can do right now, because you
So
get to be
good.
the best version of you, right? But it was
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah. Wow. That hit home. Wow. That's powerful. I'm curious, you're doing so much goodness in the world, in the health and wellness world. Like, who's someone that inspires you, or is there anybody that you're following right now at the moment?
To be honest, I follow everyone. Everyone, like I've always, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I've never put anyone on a pedestal. I've always seen them as a mentor. Everyone in this world, like even yourself, like listening to your talk the other day about your being an entrepreneur. It was so inspiring to hear those words, because it reminded me how challenging it is, and you inspired me. So I find everyone is an inspiration, because everyone is supposed to be unique. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've followed Joe Dispenza. I've done his training. And I've had some amazing mentors as well. And I still do. I mean, the first opportunity I got in the US to be in front of first responders was a group that was arranged for me by a thing called New Zealand Trade and Enterprise here. And, one of them was the ex-Secret Service to the President. And I'm going, oh, how cool is this? Like, I get to sit here because I've got this attitude, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
Every
Love that.
person I met, I go on with that, and someone will always give me a pearl of wisdom.
Yep. I love that. I'm a big reader. Were there any books that had shaped you or had a big impact on your life? I mean, is there a top 1 to 3 maybe? I don't know.
Oh, there's lots of books. The
I
amazing
know.
one at the moment is what's the one about the body that keeps the score, or your body keeps the score?
Yeah.
That's put a lot of connections for me right now, understanding, especially first responders, but understanding the trauma and the impact of trauma, and how it is a multifaceted approach to. I think right now that is probably the most inspiring book for me, because you you know a lot, like as you go through life and you learn a lot, but that's like a ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching moment for me at the moment. And I'm just loving
Hmm.
that, because,
Yeah.
I can articulate to people what's going on for them.
Yeah.
Whereas so many people are misread or misunderstood and right now with this whole trauma impact that's going on.
Yeah. That's a good one. Last two questions, we'll wrap it up. Any rituals or hacks or practices that you do on a regular basis other than Flowpresso?
I have a mind movie I do. So that's it was an app that Joe Dispenza got us involved with, and it's the ability. And what you do is you take photos, words of wisdom, and music, and that's my thing. I get on my vibration plate every morning, and that's my thing.
Love
Because
that.
as you know, as an entrepreneur, you need to constantly remind yourself why you're here and why you're doing it. So that's one of my big ones. And I think right now my biggest one right now is to breathe.
Mm.
It's been an interesting time, and for all of us, and it's so easy to get out of sync of yourself. And that's my constant challenge, is bringing myself back to being centered. So right now, I know they sound simple, but they're actually not easy.
Yeah. It's so funny too. With the times that I will do I don't when I do a breathing practice in the middle of the day, just for quick 15 minutes. I'll do something guided, and I feel so much better. And I'm just like, oh my god! If I before I was dragging, I felt like I needed a cup of coffee, and it's like all I did was breathe in a different way for 15 minutes, and I feel amazing. So you're right. It seems so simple, but so powerful.
Yeah.
Last but not least, Desiree, where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more about Flowpresso?
So we have a website. So that's hopefully everyone understands my accent. That's www.flow and then prezzo, even though everyone calls it espresso, but
Mm,
Flowpresso. So
Prezzo.
FLOWPRESSO.co.nz. That's our website, and then you can come through there and link up with me. It might be the easiest way if you want to have a conversation. But that's and so we're in the middle of FDA registration right now, so we're doing a lot, and actually been honoured to be accepted to speak at the next FACP, the next Police Wellness and Health Symposium in Anaheim in March. So I'm very excited. I start my journey back into the US then, and I'll probably be there for about 2-3 months doing my circuit. So I'm very excited. Love coming to America. It's great.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get to connect when you're out here. That's amazing.
Definitely. We'll get you in for that 40-minute session you deserve.
Let's go. Awesome. Desiree, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Joel. Take care.